Hello, everyone. Welcome to our little space that we've created. So, my name is Karina, and this is my friend Vienna.
Hi guys.
And we are going to be taking you guys on a journey for the next 14 days. So, we have come together to create something that we're calling 14 Days of Solitude. So, as you know, our world is going through a crisis right now. And we connected and we're like, how can we be of service? What can we do during this time to help others? And of course, there's something in my brain. I don't know about you, Vienna, but for me, I was like, oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. I should be like sending groceries to elderly and I should be feeding students who are, in low income areas. And I should be, and I was like, Karina, what can you do? What are you good at? Start there and then let it build. I don't know about you. Did you have anything like that?
Same here. Because I'll be honest, I've been a little anxious myself with everything going on. So there's been a lot of shoulding and, I should be there for everybody else. I shouldn't be anxious as a therapist. But then I actually worked through my own anxieties first. And then I realized I can help others by giving them these tools that I used for myself.
Yeah, exactly. Because even for me, I take for granted the tools that I have that I use with my life coaching clients that I've used with myself. And I forget that a lot of people don't have these tools. They don't have coping strategies. I know with my highly sensitive person community, with the Center for Highly Sensitive People, when people enter my community, they often ask, I say, what is your biggest challenge? And a lot of them say, how do I cope with life? How do I cope with being highly sensitive? How do I cope in general? So that word really has been sticking with me, and I've been trying to figure out a way to answer that. And so this is why this is where this 14 days came from, and we're calling it 14 Days of Solitude. Do you want to say a little bit why we're calling it that?
Sure. So Karina, you did bring up to me that talking with people who are highly sensitive, they tend to need some alone time. So we started talking about what are some other synonyms for being alone. And a lot of the words that Karina came up with all seemed to be negative sounding in our society, like isolation, loneliness, things like that. Are there any others that come to mind, Karina, that you
Oh,
remember?
I had a long list. It was
Yeah,
like desolate, avoidant, voiding, detached, recluse,
right.
exiled, hiding, like all those kind of have a negative connotation to them.
Right. So the word solitude was pretty much the only positive word that we could come up with for a synonym for being alone. And right now, with a lot of people quarantining themselves from society, again, that could be another negative term. We thought, how can we kind of turn this into something more positive and productive? So for me, the word solitude has always been positive. I myself am a highly sensitive person and I consider myself introverted. So I like to take alone time and solitude in order to take a break and work on myself and kind of go within and see what I need. So that's kind of a little bit why we chose the word solitude.
Yeah, for sure. And solitude is something that as a society we need. So it's very interesting that we're experiencing a global crisis where it involves being with yourself, because a lot of us avoid being with ourselves because of all of our past traumas and the things that we tried to hide from and not let it come to the surface. So we're kind of, even in relationships, I know that some relationships are struggling right now because they're alone with their partner and they're faced with each other's stuff, and they're like, we have to look at this stuff because now we're in each other's space and we can't just like distract ourselves with work and with kids and the day-to-day life. So
Mhm.
life is slowing down right now so that we can have an opportunity to heal and to transform some really important things. So I think that's an important thing to acknowledge about why it's really good to be in solitude right now. um, so basically over the next 14 days, we have listed, we have 14 days of coping mechanisms. So some of you might have already heard of, or you might have used, or maybe used at one point, but you forgot that it was available to you. So some of them, sometimes you'll just be reminded like, oh, this exists for me. Some of them we're taking a new spin on it, right? We're going to try not to just say the typical coping mechanisms. We're going to try to give a new spin so that you're seeing it in a new way and you're creating new neural pathways in your brain, because new neural pathways, that's the thing that helps resiliency. We want to help each of you become more resilient, because when we're going through a crisis, so some of you might not feel like you're going through a crisis because like you don't really see it happening in front of you. Maybe if you go to the supermarket, you might be like, whoa, all the eggs are gone, or like, whoa, all the toilet paper is gone. So it's like something's a little bit weird, and I know a lot of people are saying like this is a weird time, but it is a global crisis, and for some of you you're being affected by it more than others. But I think it's important to note that this, if anything, even if this is a more mild form of crisis for a lot of you, this is really good practice in case there's something larger that comes where as a global world we have to come together. So if anything, for some of you, if this doesn't feel like a high crisis mode for you, let this be practice for you, because how you show up during a crisis period now will help prevent any trauma for later. So some of you might just, I know what I've learned is that with trauma, you just kind of plow through the traumatic thing and you don't take a moment to step back and assess and process and be with whatever feelings come up for you in the moment. And then you're out of it, right? And then you're like, okay, that was then, you compartmentalize.
Right.
But then something else comes up and then things are re-triggered. But now they're re-triggered on a double level because old stuff is coming up with the new stuff. So as Vienna being a therapist and me being a life coach who has a lot of experience with mental health, a lot of training in mental health, we want to help prevent trauma for all of you who are watching, and we want to help you develop your skills so that you can develop resiliency, you know, whether it's this period of crisis or a future crisis. That is really important to us. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important, you know, what happens to our body, and why it's important to have coping skills?
Sure. So I just want to talk about anxiety in general, stress in general, because these can be stressful times for people. And, you know, even if, so basically anxiety is when your brain perceives a stimuli as a threat, right? And this could be something that's physically happening outside of you, or our own thoughts in our head could trigger these stress responses in our bodies. So a lot of us, there's a lot of unknowns out there. So with my clients in general, a lot of them are thinking ahead. They're worrying about a lot of different things at once. There's a lot of unknowns, like I said. So even their own thoughts are triggering this stress response or the fight, flight, or freeze response in our bodies. Um, so that's
Yeah,
basically,
I
yeah.
mean, I'll say for me, I think I've been a little bit of freeze mode where I'm like, okay, a lot of overstimulation, a lot of like, like I just see like little zaps of fear of like, oh my God. And then it building up to the point where it was just bombarded, especially on my social media and on the news.
Right.
I was bombarded with like a lot of very fear, you know, a lot of fear. And I kind of froze and I was like, zoop.
Right.
So I know for me, when I freeze, I'm numb because I'm overstimulated, and that's very common for highly sensitive people because we get overstimulated very quickly. So
Right.
we can freeze, we can numb. Another word was the feeling associated with that is apathy. So if you kind of sell yourself like, oh, I don't I don't really feel anything, or I don't feel anything, or why is everyone so hysterical? Like if that's been your experience, it's probably like you're probably in a freeze mode right now and you're probably in a state of numbness as a way to protect yourself. So just know this is a very common thing for highly sensitive people specifically, especially when you get to that point of overstimulation. So that's going to be something really important for you to know on how you might respond to something like this versus someone who's not highly sensitive.
Right.
So yeah, but I mean, maybe Vienna, we could just share a little bit about who we are. Um,
Sure.
I mean, the other day, this past weekend, I was feeling like I had a lot of negative thoughts running through my head. I'm like, I don't know, I don't feel like I should be making videos right now, but I really committed to like wanting to show up again for my community. You know, what do I want to say? Who do like what do I need to be in this scenario to be of service? You know, that's my question. So I of course I stepped back for a little bit because I wanted to, that's what HSPs do. We pause to check. So I paused and I checked, and then Vienna texted me and she's like, "Hey, I don't want to be in isolation." And I'm reaching out to like just check in and say hi. And I'm like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." Because it was like, as soon as she texted me, something shifted in my brain. And within 10 minutes, I was like, "Vienna, I have this idea. I want to do something. I want to do like a 14-day video series with people and just like share ways that if they're in quarantine for 14 days, you know, here are 14 things you can do while you're at home in quarantine." And I think that would be a lot of fun. And it's like, how can we make this fun, and how can we make this an opportunity for healing and transformation, and not just a time to numb and to watch Netflix and to just constantly be bombarded by like everything on the news.
Hmm. Right.
So thanks for reaching out to me.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for thinking of this idea, because I was feeling the same. And again, like, just overwhelmed with a lot of different thoughts. And how can I help people? And feeling like I need to give people answers when I really didn't have answers. That the only answers that I have are how to put ourselves in a better state of mind so that we can handle this stress.
Mm, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I was just thinking about how, like, one of my love languages that I give most easily, if you guys are familiar with love languages, is words of affirmation. Just what I'm really good at. So here I am, and here's Vienna. We're giving our words of affirmation to either help create a shift in perception or help give some new things that you can do just so that you can be affirmed that, you know, everything's going to be okay. You know, and there are things that, like, if something is not okay, we're going to share with you on, you know, some strategies on what to do when something is not okay as well. So yeah, come play with us, be in quarantine with us for 14 days, for 2 weeks. We'll be going till the end of March. If you are watching this past the time where we're doing this live, just know that these strategies are going to be beneficial and useful for you, you know, even beyond, you know, we're just using this as an opportunity to come together. But just know that if you're watching this at any time, this is going to be beneficial for you at any time, to let these 14 days be like a guide for you, kind of like an intensive workshop, if you will.
Right.
So yeah. And just before we go, I just want to share some like the basics. You know, Vienna, tell us a little bit more. You're a therapist, mental health therapist. Say a little bit more about your background.
Sure. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I own a private practice in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I specialize in helping people with anxiety and panic disorders. And I also really enjoy working with adolescents and young adults. And I do also enjoy working with athletes. I like, kind of combining the mental and the physical aspects of things. Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome. And my name is Karina. I am a life coach. I live here in New Paltz, New York. I'm the founder of the Center for Highly Sensitive People. At the center, we provide HSP competent services. We do a lot of HSP education and awareness. And in the future, I hope to have a component where we're doing advocacy for people, whether it's in a work setting, a health setting, or in a family setting. So right now we're seeing what the community might need, and we are offering that to them in the ways that we know how. So I have volunteers who are stepping forward and being a part of this movement to help people learn about being highly sensitive. So so yeah, thank you for being here. Look forward to starting day one with all of you, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.